Welcome, dear listener, to a tranquil journey through the corridors of time. As you settle into the comfort of your bed, allow yourself to be gently transported to a world both mysterious and magnificent, the captivating era we know as the medieval age. Before we begin this peaceful adventure, take a moment to breathe deeply and let the tensions of your day dissolve like morning mist. If you find solace in these gentle historical wanderings, remember that you can return to this calm sanctuary whenever sleep eludes you. But for now, let us step away from the present and allow ourselves to drift into a very different time and place. Imagine, if you will, that you are awakening not in your familiar modern bed, but upon a simple straw mattress in a small, dimly lit chamber with rough stone walls. The air carries the scent of wood smoke, earth, and perhaps a hint of animals nearby. The only illumination comes from a single candle flame, casting gentle shadows that dance across the walls. You might feel a moment of wonder, a sense that something has changed. And indeed it has. For somehow, through the magic of dreams and imagination, you have found yourself transported to medieval times. But fear not, for this is not a frightening experience, but rather an opportunity, a chance to witness a different way of life, to walk alongside farmers and nobles, to observe the struggles and triumphs that shaped our world today. So take another deep breath. Let your body sink deeper into your mattress and allow your mind to drift back through the centuries to a time of great stone castles and soaring cathedrals, of courtly traditions and profound faith, of tremendous change and enduring wisdom. Our journey begins in the English countryside, in a small village much like countless others that dotted the landscape during the medieval age. Here, life moves to the rhythm of the land, the turning of the seasons, the rising and setting of the sun, the eternal cycle of planting and harvest. You find yourself inhabiting the life of a peasant farmer, one of the countless souls who labored from dawn to dusk to coax sustenance from the soil. Your day begins before the first light of dawn as you rise from your straw bed to the sound of a rooster's crow, a sound that has echoed through the centuries. Unchanged. You dress simply in a rough-spun tunic and breeches, perhaps wrapping yourself in a woolen cloak to ward off the morning chill. Your first task is tending to the animals, feeding the chickens that peck around your feet, milking the goat that provides precious nourishment for your family, and perhaps harnessing the great ox that will help you plow the fields. As you go about your morning duties, take a moment to breathe in the essence of this simple, rustic life. The earthy musk of the animals, the sweet sharpness of the hay, the cool dampness of the earth beneath your feet. These are the aromas of a life lived close to the land, a life of honest work and simple pleasures. With the animals cared for, you return to your small one-room cottage where your family is beginning to stir. Together, you break your fast on a humble meal of barley porridge and day-old bread, washed down with a cup of weak ale. The flavors are plain but hearty, fuel for the long day of labor ahead. As the sun rises over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold, you set out for the fields, ready to begin the demanding work that is the lot of the medieval peasant. With your ox and plow, you turn the rich, dark earth, preparing it for the planting of crops, wheat and barley, rye and oats, the staples that will feed you and your family through the long winter months. The work is hard and the days are long. You feel the sun warming your back, perspiration trickling down your face, the ache in your muscles as you push yourself to keep pace with the turning of the plow. But there is also a certain satisfaction in this labor, a sense of purpose and place in the grand scheme of things. As a peasant, your life is not entirely your own. You are bound to the land and to the local lord who owns it, obligated to work his fields and pay him a portion of your harvest in exchange for his protection. It is a simple arrangement, the one that defines the lives of millions across medieval Europe. But even in this humble existence, there is room for dreams and aspirations. As you work the fields, Your mind might drift to a young boy running between the furrows, laughing as he chases after a butterfly or plays at sword fighting with a stick. Little do you know that this carefree child, born a peasant like yourself, is destined for greatness, for a rise to power that will shape the very course of history. His name is Edmund, and his story is one of the great tales of the medieval age. Born into poverty, orphaned at a young age, Edmund's life takes a remarkable turn when he is taken in by a local lord and made his squire. It is a rare opportunity for a peasant boy, a chance to escape the life of toil and servitude. That is the fate of most. Edmund seizes this chance with both hands. He learns quickly, absorbing the arts of horsemanship and swordsmanship, the intricacies of courtly etiquette and military strategy. He grows into a formidable young man, tall and strong, with a quick mind and a natural air of authority. His talents do not go unnoticed. Edmund catches the eye of the powerful Duke of Normandy, who sees in him a kindred spirit, a man of ambition and cunning who could be a valuable ally. The Duke takes Edmund under his wing, knights him, and grants him lands and titles of his own. It is a dizzying rise for a former peasant, but Edmund is just getting started. He has his sights set on an even greater prize, the English throne itself. Through a combination of political maneuvering, strategic alliances, and unwavering determination, Edmund positions himself as a claimant to the crown. And when the old English king dies without a clear heir, he seizes his chance. In the year 1066, Edmund gathers a vast army and sets sail across the English Channel, ready to stake his claim with valor and steel. His invasion force lands on the southern coast of England, where they are met by the English army, led by the new King Harold Godwinson. The stage is set for one of the most famous battles in medieval history, the Battle of Hastings. On a field near the small coastal village, the two armies clash in a desperate struggle for the fate of a nation. The English are formidable opponents, fierce warriors who fight with the strength of men defending their homeland. They form an impenetrable shield wall, their battle axes and spears bristling like the quills of some great hedgehog. For hours they hold firm against the onslaught of the Norman cavalry, repelling charge after charge. But Edmund is a cunning commander, and he has a strategy up his sleeve. He orders his cavalry to feign a retreat, drawing the English out from their defensive positions. And then, when the moment is right, he wheels his horsemen around and charges, smashing into the exposed English flanks. It is a devastating tactic, and it turns the tide of the battle. By day's end, the field is strewn with the bodies of the fallen, and the English army is in full retreat. King Harold himself is dead, struck down by an arrow to the eye. Edmund stands victorious, the crown of England now firmly within his grasp. On Christmas Day of 1066, he is crowned king in Westminster Abbey, ushering in a new era of Norman rule that will transform the country forever. The Norman conquest, as it comes to be known, is a watershed moment in English history. It brings with it sweeping changes to the language, culture, and power structures of the nation. French becomes the language of the court and the nobility, while English is relegated to the speech of the common folk. The old Anglo-Saxon aristocracy is uprooted and replaced by Edmund's loyal Norman barons, who are granted vast tracts of land to secure their allegiance. These barons waste no time in asserting their newfound power and prestige. Across the countryside, the landscape begins to change as the Normans embark on a massive program of castle building. Motte and Bailey castles spring up like mushrooms after a rain, great earthen mounds topped with wooden keeps, surrounded by deep ditches and sturdy palisades. These early castles are relatively simple affairs, built more for function than form. But over time, as Norman rule becomes more entrenched, they give way to ever larger and more elaborate fortifications. Stone replaces wood, and the classic medieval castle takes shape, a towering keep surrounded by thick curtain walls, with soaring towers and crenellated battlements, all encircled by a wide, deep moat, For the Norman elite, these castles are more than just military strongholds. They are symbols of wealth and power, the physical embodiment of their dominance over the conquered English. Within their walls, the great lords and ladies play out the rituals and intrigues of courtly life, dining on sumptuous feasts in the great hall, entertained by minstrels and jesters. But life in a medieval castle is not all pomp and pleasure. It is also a hive of industry and activity, a small town unto itself. In the bailey, the blacksmith's forge glows red as he hammers out swords and armor, while fletchers carefully craft arrows and bowstrings. Men-at-arms train in the yard, the clash of their practice swords ringing off the stone walls and in times of trouble, the castle becomes a refuge, a place of safety for noble and commoner alike. When war or unrest threatens, the drawbridge is raised, the portcullis lowered, and the great gates swung shut, sealing the castle and its inhabitants off from the dangers of the outside world. But the castle is not the only bastion of power and authority in the medieval landscape. Equally impressive, and in some ways even more influential, are the great cathedrals and monasteries that dot the countryside, soaring monuments to the might and grandeur of the Catholic Church dot in an age where faith is the cornerstone of daily life. The Church wields immense power and influence. It is the guardian of learning and knowledge, the arbiter of morality and justice, the gateway to salvation and eternal life. To be in the good graces of the Church is to be in the good graces of God Himself. The monasteries in particular serve as crucial centers of learning and culture. Within their cloistered walls, monks painstakingly copy and illuminate manuscripts, preserving the wisdom of the ancients and the teachings of the Church. They are also economic powerhouses, with vast landholdings worked by peasants and serfs, producing wool, grain, and other valuable commodities. For many, the Church provides the only path to education and social advancement. The sons of nobles and wealthy merchants might be sent to the monasteries to be trained as scholars and clerics, while the daughters are dispatched to convents to be educated in the womanly arts of needlework and household management. But the Church is not just a benevolent force. It is also a source of great awe and reverence, a stern and often unforgiving guide. From the pulpit, preachers speak of the need for faith and obedience, for acceptance of one's lot in life. They promise the rewards of heaven for those who follow the teachings of Christ, warning of the eternal torments that await the unrepentant sinner in the fires of perdition. For some, this message of salvation through suffering and self-denial is a call to a higher purpose. The Benedictine monks, for example, take vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, withdrawing from the world into a life of prayer and contemplation. They rise before dawn to chant the divine office, spend their days in silent study and manual labor, and retire to their sparse cells at night for a few hours of sleep on a hard straw mattress. But not all men of the Church are so austere. The powerful abbots and bishops are often as involved in worldly affairs as any secular lord, engaging in politics and diplomacy, even leading armies into battle in defense of their lands and interests. The line between spiritual and temporal power is often blurred, and the struggle for supremacy between church and state is a constant undercurrent of medieval life. Nowhere is this struggle more evident than in the great drama of the Crusades. In 1195, Pope Urban II issues a call to arms, urging the knights of Europe to take up the cross and embark on a holy mission to free Jerusalem and the Holy Land from those who would deny pilgrims access to the sacred sites. It is a clarion call that will echo across the centuries, setting in motion a series of wars that will shape the course of history. For the crusading knights, it is a chance for glory and salvation, an opportunity to prove their valor and piety on the field of battle. They sew the cross onto their surcoats and shields and set out for the east, leaving behind their homes and families for the promise of eternal reward. But the reality of the Crusades is far from the noble ideal. The journey to the Holy Land is long and perilous, through hostile lands and treacherous seas. Many never make it, falling victim to disease, starvation, or the swords of their enemies. And when they finally reach Jerusalem, they find a city already steeped in blood and sorrow. The Crusaders captured the Holy City in 1099 after a brutal siege that leaves the streets running red with the blood of the fallen. They establish a series of Christian kingdoms in the Levant, but holding this distant territory is a constant struggle against the determined foe. More crusades follow over the next 2 centuries, each seeking to shore up the fragile gains of the last. For the people of the Holy Land, caught between the warring factions, the Crusades are a time of great suffering and upheaval. Villages are burned, crops destroyed, innocent lives lost in the crossfire of holy war. The seeds of enmity sown in the heat of battle will take root and grow, bearing bitter fruit for generations to come. But the Crusades also have unintended consequences. They expose Europeans to the riches and sophistication of the East, to new ideas and ways of thinking that will help to fuel the great intellectual and artistic awakening of the Renaissance. Crusaders return home with spices, silks, and other exotic goods, stoking the fires of trade and commerce. The world, once so vast and mysterious, begins to shrink, the horizons of the possible expanding with each passing year. But for the common folk of Europe, life remains a daily struggle, a constant battle against hunger, disease, and the vagaries of fate. Even as the great tides of history sweep across the continent, the rhythms of peasant life remain largely unchanged, dictated by the turning of the seasons and the demands of the land. That is, until the coming of the Black Death. In the 14th century, a new and terrifying threat emerges from the east, a pestilence that will leave no corner of Europe untouched. It starts as a rumor, whispers of a strange sickness that strikes down young and old alike, leaving entire cities choked with the dead. When the plague arrives in 1347, carried on ships from the Crimea, it spreads like wildfire. The disease is borne by fleas on the backs of rats, and it moves with frightening speed, leaping from port to port, town to town, leaving a trail of devastation in its wake. The symptoms are horrific: fever and chills, nausea and weakness, the telltale swollen black buboes that give the pestilence its name. Most who contract the disease perish within days, their bodies piled in the streets to be collected by the death carts that roll through the towns and villages. Panic and despair grip the populace. Some flee to the countryside, hoping to escape the contagion, but the plague follows them, striking down whole families, whole villages. Others turn to superstition and blame, targeting outsiders for the calamity. Still others see it as a punishment from God, a divine reckoning for the sins of humanity. The death toll is staggering. By the time the worst is past, between 1/3 and 1/2 of Europe's population has perished. Fields lie fallow for want of workers to tend them. Entire towns are abandoned to the rats and the weeds. The social and economic impact is profound and far-reaching. In the aftermath of the plague, labor is suddenly scarce. Peasants once bound to the land find themselves in a position to demand better wages and more rights from their lords. The old feudal order begins to crumble as serfs and freemen alike seek a better life in the towns and cities. But the specter of the plague is not so easily banished. It will return in waves for centuries to come, a grim reminder of the fragility of life in the face of an indifferent universe. Even as Europe reels from the devastation of the Black Death, another great calamity looms on the horizon. In the rolling fields of France and the muddy pastures of England, 2 great powers are locked in a struggle for supremacy that will consume a generation. The 100 Years' War, as it comes to be known, is a conflict born of dynastic ambition and national pride. It begins as a dispute over the French crown, with England's King Edward III claiming the throne through his mother's line. But it quickly escalates into a bitter, struggle for territory and influence as the two kingdoms vie for control of the rich lands of Aquitaine and Normandy. The war is marked by great victories and crushing defeats, by acts of heroism and moments of despair. At the Battle of Crécy, English longbowmen devastate the flower of French chivalry. At Poitiers, the Black Prince captures the French king himself. At Agincourt, Henry V leads his outnumbered forces to a stunning victory that will echo through the ages. But perhaps the most remarkable figure to emerge from this long and bloody conflict is a peasant girl from the village of Domremy, a girl who will come to be known as Joan of Arc. Born into a humble farming family, Joan begins experiencing visions as a young teenager, visions of Saint Michael, Saint Margaret, and Saint Catherine, who tell her that she has been chosen by God to drive the English from French soil and see the Dauphin-crowned king in Reims Cathedral die at first. No one believes her. She is, after all, just a peasant girl with no education and no connections. But Joan is persistent, and eventually she manages to gain an audience with the Dauphin himself. Somehow, perhaps through divine inspiration or simply force of personality, she convinces him to give her a chance. Clad in armor and carrying a banner bearing the names of Jesus and Mary, Joan leads French forces to a series of stunning victories. She lifts the siege of Orleans, defeats the English at Jargeau and Patay, and clears the way for the Dauphin's coronation. For a brief, shining moment, it seems as though the tide of war has turned, but Joan's triumph is short-lived. Captured by Burgundian allies of the English, she is sold to her enemies and put on trial for heresy and witchcraft. Despite her protestations of innocence and her unwavering faith, she is condemned to death and burned at the stake in the market square of Rouen. Joan's death does not end the war. That will drag on for another 20 years. But it does mark a turning point in the days. That does not end the war. That will drag on for another 20 years. But it does mark a turning point in the Bayeux conflict and in the consciousness of the French people. The peasant girl who claimed to speak with angels becomes a symbol of national resistance and divine favor. Her story will inspire generations of patriots and believers, reminding them that even the humblest among us can be called to greatness. As the morning sun filters through the narrow window of your cottage, you awaken to the sound of a rooster crowing in the distance. The air is cool and crisp, carrying the scent of wood smoke and damp earth. You stretch and rise from your straw mattress, your body aching from the previous day's labors in the fields. Life as a medieval peasant is not easy, but it is the only life you have ever known. Your days are ruled by the rhythms of the seasons and the demands of your feudal lord. You are but one small piece in the great hierarchical puzzle of medieval society, bound by duty and tradition. You splash some cold water on your face from a wooden basin and don a simple woolen tunic and breeches. There is no time to linger. There are animals to feed, crops to tend, and 1,000 other tasks that require your attention. You break your fast with a humble meal of stale bread and weak ale, the staples of the peasant diet. As you step out into the muddy lane that runs through your village, you are greeted by the sights and sounds of daily life in the medieval age. The blacksmith's hammer rings out as he toils over his anvil, shaping iron into tools and horseshoes. The baker pulls loaves of bread from his clay oven, their aroma wafting through the crisp morning air. Children dart between the timber-framed houses, laughing and playing with crude wooden toys. At the center of the village stands the small stone church, its bell tolling to mark the hours of prayer. The church is the heart of village life, providing not only spiritual guidance, but also serving as a place of sanctuary and community gathering. The local priest is one of the few literate people in the village, and he serves as a conduit to the wider world beyond the manor. Beyond the village lie the strip fields where you and your fellow peasants toil to raise crops for your own sustenance, and to pay your rents and tithes to your lord. The work is backbreaking and never-ending, but there is a certain satisfaction in coaxing life from the soil and watching the crops grow tall and strong. Under the summer sun, as you work, you might exchange news and conversation with your fellow laborers. Talk of the weather, the health of the livestock, the latest proclamations from the Lord's manor house. In a world where most people live and die within a few miles of their birthplace, even small tidbits of information from beyond the village are precious. Life is hard, but it is not without its small joys and comforts. In the evenings, you might gather with your family and friends around the hearth, telling stories and singing songs handed down through generations. On holy days and festivals, there is music and dancing, a chance to set aside the daily toil and celebrate the turning of the seasons. But even as you go about your daily routines, you cannot escape the reminders of the rigid social order that structures medieval life. Everywhere, there are signs of the power and wealth of the nobility and the church, in the grand manor houses and monasteries that dot the landscape, in the fine clothes and rich foods enjoyed by the elite, in the deference and respect demanded by your social betters. And yet change is coming to the medieval world, even if it is not yet apparent to those living through it. New ideas and technologies are beginning to circulate, eroding old certainties. The growth of towns and trade is giving rise to a new middle class, one that will challenge the traditional hierarchy. The plague that periodically sweeps through the land, leaving devastation in its wake, also loosens the bonds of feudalism as labor becomes scarce and peasants gain a measure of bargaining power. But for now, as you toil in the fields and live out your life in the small world of your village, the medieval order remains intact. Your place in it is fixed, your duties and obligations clear. You are a part of a great chain of being, a link between the soil and the heavens, the temporal and the eternal. As the sun begins to set over the fields, you make your way back to your cottage, your body weary but your heart full. You have lived another day in the medieval world, a world of hardship and struggle, but also of community and tradition. As you drift off to sleep on your straw mattress, you dream of a world beyond the confines of your village, a world of castles and cathedrals, of knights and ladies, of adventure and glory. But for now, that world remains tantalizingly out of reach, a shimmering vision in the twilight of your mind. The next day brings more of the same, the endless cycle of sowing and reaping, of tending to animals and mending fences. But even in the midst of this daily grind, there are moments of beauty and grace. The sound of the church bell ringing out across the fields, calling the faithful to prayer. The sight of a hawk wheeling high overhead, silhouetted against a cloudless blue sky. The laughter of children as they play in the village square, their voices echoing off the timber-framed houses. And always there are the stories, tales of great heroes and saints, of miracles and marvels passed down from generation to generation. In a world where most people cannot read or write, these stories are the lifeblood of culture, the threads that bind the community together. You might hear tales of the great King Arthur and his knights of the Round Table, defending the realm against the forces of evil, or of the saintly King Edward the Confessor, who could heal the sick with his touch, or of the brave knights who ventured to the Holy Land on crusade, seeking to reclaim Jerusalem for Christendom. These stories offer a glimpse of a wider world beyond the confines of the village, a world of high adventure and noble deeds. They inspire and uplift, reminding you that even the lowliest peasant can aspire to greatness through faith and valor. But the stories also serve another purpose, to reinforce the social order and the values that underpin it. The tales of chivalrous knights and virtuous ladies, of wise kings and holy saints, all serve to buttress the hierarchy of medieval society, to make it seem natural and ordained by God. And so you listen to these stories, absorbing their lessons and their morals, even as you go about your daily tasks. They become part of the fabric of your life, shaping your understanding of the world and your place within it. As the days turn into weeks and the weeks into months, the rhythms of medieval life continue their eternal cycle. The seasons change from the soft greens of spring to the rich golds of autumn. Babies are born and old folks die. The great wheel of life turning on. And through it all, the land endures, the fields and forests, the rivers and hills that have sustained generations of peasants like yourself. It is a hard life, a life of toil and struggle. But it is also a life deeply rooted in the soil, in the timeless patterns of nature. In moments of quiet reflection, you might ponder the mysteries of the world, the great questions that have puzzled humanity since the dawn of time. What is the purpose of life? What lies beyond the veil of death? How can one live a good and righteous life in a world so full of suffering and injustice? The Church offers answers to these questions, but they are not always satisfying. The priests speak of the need for faith and obedience, for acceptance of one's lot in life. They promise the rewards of heaven for those who follow the teachings of Christ. But the heaven they describe seems far removed from the daily realities of peasant life. And yet there is something comforting in the rituals and rhythms of the Church, the solemn Mass, the flickering candles, the smell of incense. In a world that can often seem harsh and unpredictable, the Church provides a measure of stability and continuity, a link to a higher power and a greater purpose. And so you continue on, day by day, season by season, living out your life in the shadow of the great medieval order. You marry and have children of your own, passing on the skills and knowledge of your ancestors. You weather the storms of life, the failed harvests and the outbreaks of disease, the petty cruelties of your feudal overlords. Through it all, you hold fast to the values that have sustained your people for generations, the values of hard work and perseverance, of loyalty and community, of faith and fortitude. These are the values that have enabled peasants like yourself to endure through centuries of hardship, to carve out a life from the stubborn soil of medieval Europe. And as you lay on your deathbed, surrounded by your children and grandchildren, you can look back on a life well lived, a life of humble service and quiet dignity. You may not have achieved great fame or fortune, but you have played your part in the great tapestry of medieval life, adding your own small thread to the vast and intricate weave. As you close your eyes for the final time, you can take comfort in the knowledge that the world will go on without you, that the fields will still be plowed and the prayers still said, that the stories will still be told and the songs still sung. For in the end, it is not the individual that matters, but the community, the great chain of being that links the lowliest peasant to the mightiest king, the living to the dead, the temporal to the eternal. And so you slip away, your soul winging its way to the great beyond, leaving behind the cares and sorrows of the mortal world. You have lived and loved, struggled and overcome. And now you can rest in the peace of the ages, secure in the knowledge that your life, however humble, has been a part of something greater, a small but vital thread in the vast tapestry of human history. As the years turn into decades and the decades into centuries, the medieval world that you knew slowly fades away, giving way to new eras and new ways of thinking. But the legacy of that world lives on, in the stones of the great cathedrals and castles, in the words of the poets and philosophers, in the values and traditions that continue to shape our world today. And through it all, the land endures, the fields and forests, the rivers and hills that have witnessed the rise and fall of countless generations. It is a reminder of the fleeting nature of human life, of the great cycles of birth and death, growth and decay that govern the natural world. But it is also a reminder of the enduring power of the human spirit, of the ability of ordinary people to face the challenges of their time with courage and grace, to find meaning and purpose in even the most difficult of circumstances. As we look back on the medieval world, from the vantage point of the present, we can see it in all its complexity and contradiction. a world of great beauty and great brutality, of towering achievements and terrible injustices. But we can also see it as a world of deep humanity, a world in which people like yourself lived and loved, dreamed and despaired, just as we do today. And so, as you drift off to sleep, let your mind wander back to that distant time and place, to the fields and villages of medieval Europe. Let yourself imagine the lives of the peasants and the nobles, the priests and the artisans, all playing their parts in the great drama of human history. And as you do so, take comfort in the knowledge that your own life, however small and insignificant it may seem, is also a part of that great story, a thread in the tapestry of human experience that stretches back to the dawn of time and forward into the unknown future. For in the end, that is the great lesson of the medieval world, that each of us, no matter our station or circumstances, has a role to play in the unfolding of history. That each of us is called to live our lives with purpose and meaning, to strive for something greater than ourselves. And so, as you slip into the realm of dreams, let the wisdom of the ages guide your path. Let the echoes of the past whisper in your ear. And know that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope, always the possibility of a brighter tomorrow. Sleep well, dear listener, and may your dreams be filled with the wonders of the medieval world, with the courage and resilience of the human spirit that has endured through the centuries. May you wake refreshed and renewed, ready to face the challenges of your own time with the same grace and fortitude as those who came before you. And may you always remember that no matter how small and insignificant you may feel, you are a part of something greater, a link in the great chain of being that connects you all across the ages and across the world. Sleep well, and may the blessings of the medieval world be with you always. The story of the rise of King Edmund is a testament to the fluid nature of social mobility in the medieval era, even amidst the rigid hierarchy of the feudal system. Born a peasant, Edmund's life took a dramatic turn when he came under the tutelage of a local lord who recognized his potential and brought him into his household as a squire. Under the lord's guidance, Edmund learned the arts of war and statecraft, honing his skills in horsemanship, swordsmanship, and leadership. His natural abilities and quick wit caught the eye of the powerful Duke of Normandy, who eventually took Edmund into his own service and knighted him. Edmund's rise through the ranks of the Norman aristocracy was meteoric. He quickly became one of the Duke's most trusted advisors, displaying a keen political acumen and a ruthless determination to succeed. When the old Duke died without a clear heir, Edmund saw his chance to seize power. Through a combination of diplomacy, persuasion, and sheer force of will, Edmund outmaneuvered his rivals and secured the support of key Norman nobles. He was crowned Duke of Normandy in 1035 at the age of just 20. But Edmund's ambitions did not stop there. He had long believed that he had a claim to the English throne through his distant relation to the childless King Edward the Confessor. When Edward died in 1066, Edmund saw his opportunity to make that claim a reality. Gathering a massive army and fleet, Edmund launched a daring invasion of England, landing on the south coast and marching towards London. His path was blocked by the English King Harold Godwinson, who had himself only recently taken the throne. The two armies met at the Battle of Hastings, a pivotal moment in English history. The battle was long and bloody, with the English fighting bravely but ultimately falling to the superior Norman cavalry and archers. King Harold was killed, reputedly by an arrow through the eye, and the English resistance crumbled. Edmund's victory at Hastings marked the beginning of a new era in English history. He was crowned King of England in Westminster Abbey on Christmas Day 1066, taking the name Edmund, the Conqueror. As king, Edmund set about consolidating his power and reshaping English society in the Norman mold. He distributed lands and titles to his loyal Norman followers, displacing the old Anglo-Saxon aristocracy. He commissioned a great survey of the kingdom, known as the Doomsday Book, to assess its wealth and resources. And he began a massive program of castle building to secure his rule and subdue any potential resistance. But Edmund's reign was not without its challenges. He faced repeated uprisings from disaffected English nobles, as well as incursions from the Scots and the Welsh. He struggled to balance the competing demands of his Norman and English subjects and to integrate the two cultures into a cohesive whole. Through it all, however, Edmund remained a formidable and effective ruler, known for his military prowess, his political cunning, and his fierce determination. He left a lasting legacy on English history, transforming the country's language, laws, and institutions, and setting the stage for centuries of Norman rule. The story of Edmund the Conqueror is a reminder of the complex interplay of individual agency and historical forces that shaped the medieval world. It is a tale of ambition and conquest, of the rise of a lowly peasant to the heights of power and influence. But it is also a tale of the great tides of history, of the clash of cultures and the forging of new identities, of the enduring impact that one life can have on the course of human events. And so, as you drift off to sleep, let your mind linger on the image of Edmund, the peasant turned king, riding at the head of his Norman host, his banner flying high above the fields of England. Let his story be a reminder of the potential for greatness that lies within each of us, no matter our humble beginnings, and of the power of the human will to shape the world around us. Sleep well, and may the spirit of Edmund the Conqueror guide your dreams and inspire you to seize your own destiny with the same courage and determination that he showed on the battlefields of medieval Europe. May you wake with a renewed sense of purpose and possibility, ready to make your own mark on the great tapestry of human history. Sleep well, and may the blessings of the medieval world be with you always. As the Renaissance dawns on the horizon, you find yourself a craftsman in a bustling town, rising with the sun to begin your work. The streets are already alive with activity as you make your way to your workshop. Bakers pull steaming loaves from their ovens, the aroma of fresh bread mingling with the earthier scents of the open drains. Hawkers cry their wares: fresh fish, ripe cheeses, newly dyed cloth in vibrant hues. In your workshop, you set to your task, skillfully carving wood or shaping metal. Perhaps you're a carpenter, crafting sturdy furniture and the beams for the new houses springing up as the town grows. Or maybe a blacksmith, your forge breathing heat as you hammer out tools, horseshoes, and the occasional sword or breastplate for the local lord's men-at-arms. Your craft is your livelihood and your pride. You learned it from your father, as he did from his skills passed down through generations. Your pieces are sought after in the town market and beyond. Merchants carry them to far-off cities and even abroad. A fine table you made graces the hall of the local manor. As you work, the town life swirls around you. The ringing of church bells marks the hours of prayer. A procession of monks passes by, chanting in Latin. In the town square, a jester entertains a crowd with bawdy jokes and sleight of hand, his motley costume a splash of color against the half-timber-built houses. Occasionally, excitement ripples through the town. A traveling merchant arrives, his wagons laden with exotic spices, gleaming silks, strange mechanical devices. He brings news, too, of wars in foreign lands, of the latest fashions in the royal court, of a new kind of learning stirring in the universities. Some of these new ideas trickle down to your workshop. A learned client requests a classical motif carved into his bookcase. A painter friend experiments with the rules of perspective, creating astonishingly lifelike scenes. A well-traveled merchant describes the water-driven machines he saw in distant lands, sparking your imagination. But for the most part, your concerns are more immediate. Will you finish the big order in time for the fair? Will your son prove as adept at the craft as you hope? Will the coin you earn be enough to put meat on the table and wood in the fire? The rhythms of your days are guided by the demands of your trade, and the needs of your family. In the evenings, you gather in the town tavern, trading stories and news with your fellow craftsmen over a mug of ale. The concerns of kings and popes seem far away, though you dutifully pray for their souls and pay your tithes. Your world is here, in the town you've known all your life, in the work of your hands and the faces of your loved ones. As night falls, you make your way home, the streets quieting as shutters are drawn and candles snuffed. In your small but tidy house, you share a simple meal with your family, a pottage of vegetables and barley, a hunk of bread, perhaps a bit of cheese or sausage. You give thanks for the day's blessings, for the skill of your hands and the love of your kin. Later, in the darkness of your bedchamber, you reflect on the day and the days to come. Your life is not an easy one. There are always challenges, always uncertainties. But it is a life of purpose and of pride, shaped by the traditions of your craft and the bonds of your community. As you drift off to sleep, the soft breathing of your loved ones around you, you dream of the work you'll do tomorrow and the days after that, of the things you'll make, the stories you'll tell, the life you'll build, one day at a time. In this world that is changing slowly but surely around you, the Renaissance is coming with all its tumult and its glory. But for now, in this moment, there is peace. The peace of a job well done, a family well loved, a place in the world, however humble, that is yours. It's a peace hard-earned by generations before you, a peace you'll pass on to those who come after. So rest now, craftsmen of the Middle Ages. Rest and dream of a world that is ending and a world that is yet to be. The dawn will come, as it always does, and with it another day to make your mark, however small, on the pages of history. Sleep as your ancestors slept, and your descendants will sleep, under the same stars, dreaming the same dreams. The eternal human dream of a life lived with meaning, with skill, with love. The dream that carries us through the ages, from the distant past to the unknown future. The dream that connects us all in the end, no matter the time or the place. The dream of home, of purpose, of peace. Sleep well, dear craftsman. Sleep well and sweet dreams as the medieval world slips softly into the Renaissance and the cycle of history turns on, inexorably through the long, quiet night. And so we leave you drifting gently into the waiting arms of sleep as the soft sounds of the medieval town fade into the distance. The murmur of the crowd, the clang of the blacksmith's hammer, the call of the crier, all melt away into the hush of night. In their place, the timeless lullaby of history whispers through the darkness, the soft footfalls of the generations who came before, the gentle breathing of those yet to come, all joined in the endless dance of time, rising and falling like the tides, like the phases of the moon. And through it all, the human spirit endures, constant as the northern star, the spirit of creativity, of community, of hope. The spirit that built the cathedrals and the castles, that illuminated the manuscripts and the stained glass. The spirit that dreamed of a better world, even in the darkest of times. That spirit lives on in you, dear listener, as you slip into the realm of dreams. It connects you to the craftsman in his workshop, to the monk in his scriptorium, to the peasant in his field, to all those who came before and all those who will follow. So let that connection comfort you as you drift off into the peaceful oblivion of sleep. Let it remind you that you are part of something greater, something enduring. That your story, however small it may seem, is woven into the grand tapestry of human history. And let it give you strength to face the challenges of your own time, your own life. The strength to build, to create, to dream, to leave your own mark on the world, however humble, however fleeting. For that is the lesson of the medieval craftsman and of all those who came before and after him. That each life, each moment has meaning. That each of us has a role to play, a contribution to make in the great unfolding story of humanity. So play your part, dear listener, with skill and with love. Build your own cathedrals, whether of stone or of spirit. Illuminate your own manuscripts with the light of your unique vision. And when the night comes, as it must for all of us, rest easy in the knowledge that you have lived and loved and left your mark. That you have been a part of the human story in all its sorrow and all its glory. Sleep well, dear time traveler. Sleep well. And may your dreams be filled with the wonders of the ages and the quiet contentment of a life well lived. May you wake to a world made a little brighter by your presence, a little richer by your gifts, and may the echoes of the medieval craftsman's workshop and of all the workshops and all the workers of history resound softly in your sleeping ears. A gentle reminder of the endless cycle of creation and rest, of labor and peace that marks the turning of the great wheel of time. Sleep now and dream. Dream of ages past and ages yet to come. Dream of the infinite possibilities of the human spirit and of your own precious place in the vast unfolding tapestry of history. Sleep well and sweet dreams until the dawn comes round again and the great war of living begins. Anew, the sun rises over the medieval landscape, casting long shadows from the towering spires of a great cathedral. The building seems to reach to the very heavens, a testament to the power and influence of the Church in this age. As you approach, you hear the faint chanting of monks drifting from within, their voices raised in an endless cycle of prayer. You step inside, and the bustle of the outside world fades away, replaced by an ethereal stillness. Light filters through intricate stained glass windows, painting the stone floor in a kaleidoscope of colors. The air is thick with the scent of incense and burning candles. This is more than just a place of worship. It is the beating heart of the community. The cathedral serves not only as a spiritual center, but also as a place of learning, charity, and even commerce. In the nave, the poor line up for alms, receiving bread and coin from the church's coffers. In the cloisters, young scholars pore over precious manuscripts, absorbing the wisdom of the ancients. But the church's influence extends far beyond these walls. In this age, the line between secular and sacred power is blurred. Bishops and abbots wield enormous influence, often serving as advisors to kings and lords. They hold vast tracts of land, overseeing farms and villages. Some even lead armies in the battle, the cross emblazoned on their shields. The Church is the guardian of knowledge and learning. In the scriptoriums of monasteries across Europe, monks labor to copy and illuminate manuscripts, preserving the works of classical authors and church fathers. These are the seeds of the Renaissance, waiting to sprout. But the Church is also a source of great reverence and sometimes fear. From the pulpit, preachers speak of the need for faith and obedience, for acceptance of one's lot in life. They promise the rewards of heaven for those who follow the teachings of Christ, while warning of the eternal torments that await the unrepentant sinner. As you wander deeper into the cathedral, you come upon a small side chapel. Inside, a lone monk kneels in prayer, his robes dusty from the road. This is Francis of Assisi, a man who will come to embody a new ideal of Christian devotion. Born into a wealthy Italian family, Francis enjoyed a life of privilege and pleasure in his youth. But a series of encounters with beggars and lepers led to a spiritual awakening. He renounced his worldly goods and took a vow of poverty, dedicating himself to a life of simplicity and service. Francis preached a gospel of love and compassion, seeing the divine in all of creation. He tamed a wolf that was terrorizing a village, seeing it as a brother. He composed hymns to the sun and moon, praising them as God's handiwork. His example inspired thousands to follow him, forming a new religious order, the Franciscans. They wandered the countryside, preaching to the poor and tending to the sick. They embodied a new model of spirituality, one based on humility, charity, and a direct connection to God. Francis's legacy would endure long after his death. His simple piety and love of nature would influence figures as diverse as Dante and Gandhi. In a time of religious division and corruption, He offered a path back to the original message of Christianity. As you watch Francis pray, lost in silent contemplation, you feel a sense of peace wash over you. In a world of constant struggle and upheaval, his message of compassion and humility feels like a beacon of hope. But the tranquility of the moment is shattered by a sudden commotion outside. Shouts and the clatter of hooves fill the air. You rush to the cathedral door to see a breathless messenger stumble in, his face ashen. "The king is dead," he cries. "Long live the king!" The old monarch has passed, and a new one must take his place. In the coming days, lords and bishops will gather to pay homage and swear fealty. But in the shadows, others plot and scheme. Seeing opportunity in the transition of power, the great wheel of medieval life turns on, birth and death, war and peace, following the eternal rhythms of the seasons. As you step back out into the sunlight, you feel the weight of centuries pressing down upon you, the countless lives that have come before, each leaving their mark on the tapestry of history. The road stretches out before you, winding through fields and forests, towards castles and keeps, villages and towns. There are more stories waiting to be told, more faces to meet, merchants and minstrels, knights and knaves, all playing their part in the grand drama of the Middle Ages. But for now, you feel the pull of sleep, the dream of the past fading into the soft warmth of your bed. The sounds of the medieval world, the tolling of church bells, the clang of the blacksmith's hammer, the laughter of children at play, all merge and melt into a soothing ambient hum. As you drift off, the faces of history swirl through your mind. Edmund the Conqueror on his warhorse, Francis of Assisi surrounded by birds, Joan of Arc in her shining armor. They are all part of the rich tapestry of the human story, the never-ending quest for meaning and connection in an uncertain world. And while their world may be long gone, lost to the mists of time, their stories endure, whispering to us across the centuries. In our dreams, we walk beside them, sharing in their triumphs and their struggles, their joys and their sorrows. So let us dream together, you and I, wandering the winding paths of the medieval world. Let us listen to the voices of the past and find in them echoes of our own hopes and fears. And let us wake in the morning with a new appreciation for the long and winding road that has led us to where we are today. Sleep well, dear dreamer. May your slumber be filled with visions of castles and cathedrals, of brave knights and wise kings. May you find in the stories of the past a compass for navigating the present. And may you always remember that you too are part of the great story of humanity, a story that is still being written. Page by page, day by day. The medieval world fades away now like a tapestry gently folded and put away. But it will be waiting for you whenever you wish to return. In the realm of dreams and imagination. So sleep now and dream of days gone by, of a world that was both simpler and more complex, more brutal and more beautiful. Sleep and let the lullaby of history carry you to a place of rest and peace. Sleep well. And may the gentle whispers of the medieval world guide you through the peaceful hours of night, until the dawn comes once more to greet you with its promise of a new day.